conference, they presented a cure for AIDS, and it was immediately suppressed. Why? This is a package of Wrigley's chewing gum. When I was a kid, it cost a nickel. When I bought one at the John Wayne Airport before I was flying east recently, it cost $1.08. This package of chewing gum represents the entire cost of curing HIV, cancer, Epstein-Barr, hepatitis, even herpes. That takes about 5 months. These others take about 3 weeks. And this is proven, and we'll prove it to you before you leave the room tonight. So my one prop in this show is a package of chewing gum, and the price of this chewing gum will cure these formerly incurable diseases. And I want you to know this, and I want you to try it with your sick friends, and it will work. In the beginning, when I first heard of this and decided to research it and maybe reconstruct this therapy with my own money, don't forget, I'm not selling anything. I have nothing to sell you. I haven't gotten a penny from any of the dozens of people who are building these and curing all their friends. Most of the people who are building them today had a sick wife, lupus, chronic fatigue syndrome. They saw the plans in magazines. It's been published in about 7 medical journals and about 10 consumer magazines. Went down to Radio Shack, bought the parts, built them, got their wives out of bed, got them out of the clutches of these very expensive doctors. Now they're back at work, living happily ever after, we hope. We'll tell you about Immortal Blood last. This is really a surprise. So basically, I think before we get into the technical part of this, it's not too technical. 10-year-old kids are doing this. I want to share a legal U.S. document with you that might be a tremendous surprise. I did not print these up at the Xerox place before we left. The other papers were printed at midnight at Kinko's because I wanted them to be here today. But I want to read the most remarkable document that I personally have ever seen, and I've worked in this field for many years. For the people who will hear this tape or see it, we're reading from U.S. Patent number 5188738, which was finally issued on February 23rd, 1993, by the U.S. Patent Office after they had demanded massive documentation. There are several things you cannot patent. Perpetual motion, for example, that's considered impossible, and many other things. But one of these was a cure for AIDS, because this shakes to the very roots a $20,000 a year price tag to Glaxo Wellcome for combination therapies, including AZT, DDI, DD5, many others. And once an AIDS patient starts these, he's on them for the rest of his life, or he will surely die. Once a patient is on this, in 3 weeks he will be symptom-free and back at work, regardless of his blood tests. And in this patent, inventor Stephen Colley, that was the man who made the original discovery, and there are 14 of these total from different places, MIT, Harvard, etc. Every one of these patents describes this new paradigm in medicine that if you talk to the colleges, they will deny having anything to do with. So it's up to us at the grassroots to get this information out there where it'll help. And this is pretty amazing. And I'm going to leave this copy with Mark, and he is to Xerox these for 2 cents a side at Staples or Office Supply. That's the price in L.A. I had to pay 7 cents to get these ready in time. And anyone who wants these will pay Mark whatever they cost, plus about 10% for his time, and you will have the proof in your own hands. And I'm going to read the proof to you right now. We're in column 1, line 30, and it said, because of this problem, The present invention has been devised to attenuate any, as an engineer I don't like this word any, but it's proven to be true, to attenuate any bacteria virus, including the AIDS HIV virus, parasites, and or fungus contained in the blood, either contributed by a donor to the point that any such contaminant is rendered ineffective for infecting a normally healthy human cell, but does not make the blood biologically unfit for use in humans. Now, don't forget, the patent examiners required massive documentation before they would issue this. They go on in column 2, line 10, again they state, bacteria, virus, fungus, and or parasites contained in the blood or any other body fluids are rendered ineffective to infect or affect normally healthy human cells. And then they go on, when we get to the claims, which is where the real meat of a patent lies. If they're allowed these claims, then they have an exclusive right to this. Conjunction with the magnitude of the biologically compatible current flow. For example, treatment of virus and media at 100 microamperes for 3 minutes has been observed to substantially attenuate, render ineffective the AIDS virus. Similar treatment at other field strength values and lengths of time will have a similar attenuating effect on bacteria, virus, parasites, and or fungus, which are present in blood or other bodily fluids being treated. We'll show you how to get it out of the lymph tissue for $19 for the device, about $2 for the batteries in a couple of minutes. They go on and on and on this way, but what's the catch, boys and girls? You may want to zoom in on this, Mark. Here in Figure 1, which embodies the main thrust of the patent, it shows the human forearm. A hypodermic needle has been inserted into the ulnar artery, ULNAR. The blood is taken out of that artery, run past 2 little electrodes, which are 1 inch apart, connected to an alternating current source of supply, namely a battery with a relay on it, and then, like dialysis, even back into the opposite arm or into a bottle where that blood is totally safe and uncontaminated for use in transfusions. How many hundreds of thousands of hemophiliacs are AIDS positive now because they've gotten contaminated blood? We've had 50,000 deaths so far, and there has not been reason for 1 death. Or, if you have enough money, let's hypothetically say, this is hypothetical only, that you're a basketball star, and you disappear for about 5 months, and when you come back, you're playing basketball, and your sweat is splattering on your and the other teammates. What happened? You went and you sat in a chair similar to chelation. You spent about 3 hours a day for about 5 months having the blood taken out of your body. The problem here is that little bitty tenth of a cc of blood in my left earlobe, and that blood in my big toe, my left hind foot, has got to circulate back into the body and go past these electrodes during a certain period of time until that blood is cleansed of all the aliens, all the parasites, all the alien life forms in that blood. So they show a second approach. In this arm, you see that the arm has been opened surgically. The ulnar artery has been opened surgically. A little chamber, less than 1 inch long, has been inserted. That chamber contains a small lithium battery, like goes in your electric watch, used to go in heart pacers. And after a number of months, the blood has flowed through this to the point where enough of the aliens, the adversary, have been neutralized, and you no longer have AIDS. And yet you can hardly pick up a paper today. But the baseball game this Saturday afternoon, God help us, the proceeds are being dedicated to look for a cure from AIDS, cure for AIDS. And this is an absolute lie, because a perfectly workable, totally inexpensive cure for AIDS was invented in this country in March of 1990 and then suppressed. Why? Because a person dying of AIDS will spend up to $20,000 a year for chemotherapy, for treatments which do not work, including ozone, insufflation, blood bubbling, and all. I've been through all this. I have a $17,000 Hansler ozonator. I have a Sander unit that I got from Germany through an American broker. Many of these hypothermia, or hyperthermia, many of these things seem to work on the drafting board, but the people die. The operation was a success. And 95% of the people who have been through this treatment, which I'm going to demonstrate for you and you can do for yourself, are well. They have no symptoms. That's the difference. Now, doctor, could you help me a minute?
I have a question. What the mutation factor is?
This kills them all. Don't worry about it. His question was, what about the mutation factor? The reason that you read over and over and over that the vaccine didn't work was that once it was put into the body, the AIDS had mutated to the point where it was resistant to that. That's a very good question. Now, you're familiar with this. I can't read this out loud without unsigning 5 pages of legal documents, but I'm going to show it to you. Now, these are IRBs. This fellow started with 573,983 HIV RNA by PCR. This chap started with 412,000. We started this IRB study last year. In other words, we have a stack at home in my briefcase, perhaps 8 inches thick, of successful AIDS studies. Now, read this date. This is 8/11/95, 7/15. When he started, we had 3,064 PCR counts per milliliter. Oh, it's in here. I'll show it to you in a minute. His T cells have recovered to about 500 now. They started at about below 10. Now, here's the date, 11, 8, 9. This is 3 months later. He finally got around to having another PCR. That means polymerase chain reaction test, 95. HIV-1 RNA by PCR less than, the little figure, less than 100, which means that it was 0. Thank you.
Did I do an adequate job?
That did it. This is all it took. It cost him nothing. We have never charged one single one of our AIDS patients a penny for undergoing this study. All they have to do is buy their own lab tests when they're finished, which is quite reasonable. The funny thing about these tests was the biggest laboratory, it's in San Jose, California, that does PCR testing west of the Mississippi, would not return these to my hospital, which is in Newport Beach. They said there is no such thing as a cure for HIV. Why should we send these tests? Obviously, you substituted the blood from the patient. Or you've gotten the clean patient here, and you've put the old patient's name on it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Said, no, we haven't. Then what did they do? They had some secretaries at the laboratory that began calling our secretaries. Said, what are you doing down there? You're reporting clean blood. You're sending in blood that's clean. This is impossible. What had happened? They were frightened to death of the mafia, the drug cartels, the medical associations, Don't forget, children, a patient cured is a customer lost. And why? Will they allow a $1.32 cure when the average person with cancer is spending from $50,000 to $200,000 for surgery, chemotherapy, and radiation? May I tell them about you, Jane? When Jane's cancer had metastasized and the doctor told her that she would surely die if she did not receive chemotherapy and the rest of the things, radiation, she said, "No, I'm going along with blood cleaning because only 4% of the people survived your protocols. And our last tests, you have a totally clean biopsy and you have a totally clean CAT scan." And she lost 29 pounds. We have hundreds of these people. A lady comes around to breakfast occasionally, Linda Wright, who had lupus. She could hardly make it from the couch to the bathroom. She couldn't get out of the house. Her energy was shot for the day. I gave her one of my units. I'll show it to you later. In 3 weeks, she went back to the doctor, the MD who had been treating her for about 10 years, and got a totally clean blood test. The doctor could not believe it. He sent it to a second laboratory for confirmation. Linda's come around to the cafe where we met this morning at 8 o'clock on Bristol Avenue in Santa Ana. Totally cured. She's trying to get her blood test from the doctor. Meanwhile, we have hundreds of them from the doctors that I have given this apparatus to. I've replaced the batteries for free. I'm not making a nickel on this. This is what you've got to know. And it works. And why haven't you heard about this? There are billions of dollars invested in magnetic resonance imaging, MRI machines, invested in surgery, X-ray, CAT scanners. Many of these contracts are held by such companies as General Electric and Westinghouse and others that build this apparatus. Somebody has to amortize this. And I have heard that the mafia owns 51% of most of the major drug houses, pharmaceutical houses in the U.S., and maybe 60% of the illegal drug cartels, cocaine and heroin, everything, in South America. They're playing both sides of the fence. They're pretty smart. Do you think they want this information to get out to people like yourselves? There'll be about 10 people in this room where this information will fall on fertile ground and you'll do something with this. There are emerging viruses now that were designer made. They all start with the reverse transcriptase. Well, for example, HIV started with bovine Vishnu virus and was back engineered according to Dr. Strecker and others. Have any of you here read the book, The Emerging Viruses by David Horowitz? Wonderful. Dave Horowitz. Leonard, I'm sorry. Len Horowitz. He was on KPFK the other night. I listened to him.
Dr. Strecker worked as well.
Yes. I used to appear on talk shows with Strecker. When his brother was still alive, somebody murdered him. I know these people. They're emerging viruses. Hantavirus, Lassa fever, Ebola, E-B-O-L-A, for which there's no known cure, no known antibiotic, no known vaccine that will be knocked in a matter of hours with blood electrification. What do you do? Okay, let's see the engineers, physicists, again, computer whiz kids. Wonderful. You want to get about 50 microamperes, that means 50 millionths of an ampere, into the blood. You do that by putting about 3 to 4 millithousandths, M-I-L-L-I, amperes into the outside of the skin. And I'm going to hook up now and show you exactly what you do and how you do it that will free you forever from cold vaccines, from viruses. Your kids will never have mumps, measles, whooping cough. Your body eventually builds antibodies to these, and they can't get it again once they've had it. And we have a lot to say about antibodies, and will.
How much attention have you got from alternative press?
They throw me out.
Alternative press as well?
From who?
Alternative press.
They want nothing to do with this, unfortunately. Yeah. By the way, these papers are available. They cost me nearly $2 each at Kinko's. If I could have waited until noon today, or rather when they opened about 7 o'clock, I could have gotten them for 2 cents a side. If you want these papers, they have to be $3 because it's 22 pages. It'll tell you how to make colloids, which we're going to demonstrate here tonight. If you don't have any money, Jane's been instructed to give you the paper for free. Just say, I can't afford it. We only have 120 of them in the box. And we suggest you get them because we normally run out. Now this little device if you look rather closely, you can see a small red and green light flashing on this unit. I hope you can see it in the back of the room. Let's get one that's got a brighter light on it. We'll tell you where to get these, and no, I don't make a penny on them. Not 1 cent have I ever made on these. You put a piece of stretch cloth with Velcro sewn on each end. Well, a pretty big end. You dip a couple of stainless steel welding rod, 3/32 inch in diameter, cut to 1 1/8 inch long.
Is that 316, 304?
It's 316. Good question. This does not oxidize, it doesn't rust. This little bottle contains dilute sea salt. Never use table salt. Table salt is poison. To be sold in the United States legally, it has to be iodized. Morton salt, Clark's, all of the various brands are iodized, and if you look on the ingredients, it's full of aluminum, aluminosilicate. These might cause Alzheimer's. The alumina and silicate is put in there so when it rains it pours. If it's natural salt, it'll clump. So don't electrolyze that into your body. These electrodes are placed on my wrist, and in the paper we've stolen some printed material here from Gray's Anatomy. We're on page 7, showing the places that the blood is closest to the surface of the skin. Don't forget, we have to put about 3 to 4 milliamperes into the skin before it goes through the squamous epithelial, the superficial fasciolata, the subcutaneous sebaceous, the walls of the arteries and veins. There are 7 layers of insulation. There's fat tissue between the outside world and the inside world where your blood is circulating, about 5 pints of it, maybe 4.5 times an hour. And eventually, every drop of blood in your body will go past these electrodes. So what do? I put together some other stretch material. This tells you exactly how to do it on page 5 of your paper. Now, if I've got enough arms and legs here. You plug the electrodes into the machine, turn it up to where it's comfortable, and you don't want to attract attention at the restaurant. You pull your sleeve down over the device, and that 3 to 4 milliamperes is going into the skin, eventually making its way through the 7 layers of tissue into the blood, and causing spontaneous remissions of any virus, fungus, parasite, microbe, pathogen, germ, bacteria that has been tested to date by some of the biggest universities in this country, and you have not heard one word about it, any more than you've heard a word from the people who developed these viruses to use them for biological warfare weapons to control the population, people like you and me. Overpopulation, Bertrand Russell called us in the New World Order worthless eaters. They want us to die. I have been told by the director of Social Security in the United States that I would be targeted if I let this out. When you get to be 65, you're supposed to be warehoused, given mind control drugs like Valium, tranquilizers, and die. What would happen if we restored the mental faculties, which we have done time after time after time with a device called cranial electrostimulation? That's a different topic. I've gotten every award in the world short of the Nobel Prize for developing this in 1983. That's another topic. But while I'm talking to you now, my blood is circulating past this device. Anything in that blood that doesn't belong there can be seen under a microscope in any doctor's office who has ultra-dark field microscopes or phase contrast microscopes. We believe the best one is the Zeiss, Z-E-I-S-S, Wetzler. Not Wetzler, yeah, Jena. If you take normal blood, put it under a cover slip, a drop of blood from your finger, put that cover slip on a microscope slide, adjust the condensers and the objectives. It is absolutely teeming with alien life forms. You cannot see the viruses because your maximum resolution in dark field is around 3,000 diameters. But you can see this teeming blood supply that is normal to any person who was born and raised in the United States. I'd hate to tell you how many viruses have been identified in this country. Over 140 are known, well known, and in the medical textbooks to parasitologists. If you live in Africa, there are 500 recognized strains of parasites. These parasites make up about 2 pounds of your body weight. An average 160-pound man is carrying about 2 pounds of these parasites. These parasites have learned some very clever tricks. 2.5 years ago, and I have the pictures to prove it, I, Bob Beck, weighed 290 pounds. When I started using this blood cleaner, I mysteriously lost 130 pounds without changing my diet in any way, without exercising. The cartilage in my knees is shot. I was tremendously athletic when I was younger. The doctors told me not to walk today until I get some knee replacements, which will be about $80,000 here, $3,000 in Great Britain. And I'm going to do that someday. But 2.5 years ago, when I saw the airline stewardess coming down the aisle with this belt extender, seat belt extender, I thought, oh my God, she's coming to my seat. And everybody in this plane knows it. I could hardly fit in that seat. The seat belts would never go around me. I couldn't sit in a booth in a restaurant. I'd have to sit at a table and push the chair way away so I could fit. It was embarrassing. I'd spent maybe $50,000 in diets, pills, legal methamphetamine, pregnant mare urine, gonadotropin that was shot into my hips because this was supposed to change your metabolism and make you lose weight. Every diet from the Atkins to the protein-sparing fast and many, many others, where I nearly killed myself on diets. And as soon as I'd stop, I'd gain it all back, plus a few dozen pounds. So we had to say, why in the world did this thing that I built for about $20 make me lose all of this weight, make my hair grow back? I used to be bald on top. I had a fringe around the outside, and I have photographs of this too. When I put this together as a slideshow, you'll see me before and after. I'm in my 70s now, but I feel like I'm 30 years old. We won't even talk about my libido. But the point is that this works. And all we did was do something that is verboten to medicine. We did not use drugs. We did not use penicillin, ampicillin, antibiotics. We simply put this small 50 millionths of an ampere through your blood, and that literally neutralized every single adversary in that blood that didn't belong there. It's that simple. How did we lose weight? How did Jane lose the weight? How did many of our friends lose it? Not all, about 30%. This works. The parasites, which have been found in the intestines of the apes that were fossilized, were frozen in North Polar ice caps, etc., like dinosaurs, had learned to change one of the P in the 50 series DNA in our epistats, the hypothalamus, put the listin into your body, which forced you to eat. Why? So they would eat. For the same reason that we send cattle to a feedlot and fatten them up before we put them on the market. Those parasites have learned to control our epistat in the hypothalamus to the point where we will overeat. And I'm here to tell you something that you might not have realized until this moment. It is not what you eat that causes weight loss or weight gain. It is not. Any of you who have ever been on a diet know this. It is how much of what you eat that these aliens store for their own meal next time that makes the difference. And when I got those boogers out of my system, and you can prove this with any doctor who has a dark field microscope, Jane and I are two of the 17 people now who apparently have immortal blood, and I'll tell you this story, it's fascinating. When they're out of there, baby, your body goes back to your optimum weight. You were maybe 20 years old and in college or just out of high school.
Did they eliminate through the bowel?
It eliminates through the kidneys, the liver, the bowel, the lymph system. We'll talk about that. It's in the paper, yes. One woman who was doing this had Epstein-Barr chronic fatigue syndrome so badly that she hadn't been out of the house in maybe a year and a half. After she'd done this for 3 weeks, she was feeling so well that she decided to run down to the corner drugstore and get some makeup. On the way back, she had a tremendous urge to get to the bathroom as soon as possible. She stepped off the curb, got to the middle of the street, and a big mass of worms. Oh God, so she took off like gangbusters. We've had worms come out of people's eye sockets. You're nodding, you've seen this.
Eyebrows as well.
Yeah. We're literally loaded. Pardon me a second. Here I've got a perfectly good PA system and I'm screaming at you. By the way, Hulda Clark is selling a device called the SynchroZapper. Anyone in here heard about it? You hold in your palms. Simply does not work, cannot work. The way you measure the current in your blood you take the Ulnar path where you can feel the pulse. I'm going to take this off now, you've all seen it. You stick a hypodermic needle, thank you, into the blood itself, measure the IR drop, the resistance. I is current, R is resistance, E is voltage, I equal E over I equal ER. or E equal air. The point is that you can measure that in the blood. If you measure Hulda-Clark's device, which we've done, there is no current going into the blood whatsoever. As a placebo, it is wiping out the radionic response of the parasites in the system. You need that 50 microamperes through the blood, and if you can't measure it, boys and girls, it isn't there. And you don't need a surgeon to open up your vein every 2 months and change the little device that was described in this patent. You can do it yourself. It costs less than the price of a package of chewing gum, and that covers the batteries for a 3-week supply of 9-volt cells. And the circuit is published. Yes, sir?
Mr. Beck, where is the other side of that circuit, that small IR drop measure that? Is it at the end of the hand?
We put the electrodes on the ulnar radial and the brachial here.
Yes.
That's putting the electricity. The blood is 700 times more conductive than the flesh, the fat, subcutaneous sebaceous. That path goes up to here, comes down the other side, goes through the hand. There are 2 paths for the hand because the Creator considered that important to use, and if one of them is occluded, you can still fight or flight. And you measure the IR drop about 6 inches apart and the brachial ulnar. That's where you do it.
Is that described in your literature?
It's fully described in the literature.
Good, thank you.
Anything you're likely to ask here tonight is included in this paper, which has about $50,000 worth of research in it. And God, I wish I'd had it 5 years ago before I tackled this job. I've paid for this out of my own pocket, which proves that I don't have to change the results to comply with some pharmaceutical houses or tobacco industry's protocols. This brings up a whole lot of questions. Now let's suppose you have a cure-all, which you do. How are you going to stay out of jail when you use it? How many people in this room have looked at a menu in the last month? What's this restaurant got to eat? Let's see it. Come on. That's it. I hereby pronounce you researchers. Now let me read you some little-known federal laws that most health professionals have never heard about. We're reading from the Code of Federal Regulations, Book 21, Article 807.65, Subpart D, Exemptions. We're on page 4 of your paper. You don't have to make any notes tonight. Exempt from regulation. That means city, county, state, municipal, FDA, Food and Drug Administration, exempt from regulation. This is freedom, boys and girls. You're going to take back your power now. Paragraph D, we're on page 4. Licensed practitioners, including physicians, dentists, and optometrists, to manufacture or otherwise alter devices solely for use in their practice. Paragraph F, persons who manufacture, prepare, propagate, compound, or process devices solely for use in research. Now, aren't we all here researching life, everything around us? What do we eat that makes us feel good, and what gives us hives and asthma? Solely for use in research, teaching, or analysis, and do not introduce such devices into commercial distribution. Now, if the FDA comes around and knocks on your door, why have you cured all these women with Epstein-Barr? How come this guy with hepatitis, who was turning yellow, going in for dialysis occasionally, why is he well? It's against the law to practice medicine without a license. Just tell him, I'm a researcher. Go to hell. At that point, you have taken back your power. And that's why one company is selling about 200 of these kits that are about 99% assembled a month. You just tell the FDA investigator, look, I assembled this myself. Go to hell. It's that simple. And his name and address are on the blackboard in case any of you are so lazy, so stupid, so electronically impaired that you're not going to build these things. You can buy one for about $90. Ready to go. Well, that's an overview of what I'm going to talk about tonight. I'm going to show you some things that will save you tremendous... Yes, ma'am.
I have two questions. Number one, what about side effects? Number two, what about using that on people who do not have disease?
Okay.
Yes.
The lady has asked two excellent questions. What about side effects? What about using it on otherwise healthy people? The side effects are very real. The side effects are mostly caused by two things. You've eaten garlic. The garlic is in your blood. Garlic is a deadly poison if it gets into your blood. You know that you can drink rattlesnake venom and it won't kill you. But if you get some of that into a cut, you're in deep trouble. Garlic is one of the most potent poisons known. If you're an organic gardener and you want to use garlic instead of DDT, it'll kill any insect that's likely to appear in your garden. Soldiers in World War I and World War II were taught to rub the tips of their bullets in garlic. They could only wing somebody, a flesh wound, and that person would surely die. They did not need to hit the heart, the brain with the bullet. When I bought a blowgun from Dr. Solomon in Denver a couple of years ago, he took me out in the hall, said, Bob, if you want to kill somebody silently, just get a clove of garlic. Give them a quarter for it down at the food store. Put the tip of your dart gun, blowgun, dart, into the garlic, and you have a silent killer, and it will look like he had some garlic for lunch. The pathologists, forensic pathologists, can't find it. So we had a bunch of garlic tested at a northern medical university in California. And have you heard the results of that test? Garlic. If you eat the amount of garlic in an average salad dressing, it kills more brain cells than 6 martinis. But you have so many billions that it really doesn't matter. But when you put current into the blood, electroporation, 4 times a second, we're using 4 hertz, that's not critical, 4 times a second, the current is reversing polarity, 180 degrees. Each time it reverses, the little cell membranes, potassium sodium membranes in the red cells, open up and let whatever is in the blood plasma go into those cells at 30 times the efficacy of a normal dosage. I have 1 aspirin tablet in my palm. If I eat it, I won't get sick. If I take 30 aspirin at the same time, I'm likely to get sick. The answer to your question is that we normally took people off of any herbs, any vitamins, any pharmaceuticals for 2 weeks before we started them on the hospital studies in California, in Southern California. Now we take them off of these drugs, herbs, medicines, vitamins for 2 days before we start. We haven't lost anyone yet. And what somebody who's detoxic looks like, he'll get rashes on his legs, on his face. We had one fellow who was dying from AIDS. It took 2 attendants to lift the man from his bed where he was on life support to the potty. And then they'd have to lift him back into bed. He's back at work, happy and healthy, totally symptom-free today. When he started, we nicknamed him Vesuvius. He looked like a volcano. Some soft pockets of cysts formed under his skull. These were like hemangiomas or something. They were fairly loose. Finally, they broke, and this yellow-green pus was running down his face. So he got a towel, and he wrapped it around his head to absorb this effusium. And he looked just like the volcano Vesuvius. And a lot of the guys on the study, we had our first study went through in October of 1995. And I said, Andy, wouldn't you rather have that stuff on the towel than in your system where it's loading down your immune system, etc.? Oh, yes. So he went right back on the blood cleaner. But if you're detoxing too rapidly, and this is called Herxheimer's syndrome, and it's in your paper, your liver and kidneys and spleen cannot handle these neutralized viruses, pathogens, germs, bacteria, ad nauseum quite as well. They've got to get out of your body somehow. So your number 1 thing to watch out for is detoxification. This proves that something is changing in the body. your feces and urine will smell badly, you'll know that you're detoxing. All sorts of symptoms come up. The second thing is the electroporation. And Mark, I think I'm going to do this. One of the most important papers that we came across in our research was published in the Journal of Cellular Biochemistry, volume 51, page 426 to 435, and this was 1993. You don't need to make notes. All of this is in your paper, boys and girls. And describes some works of James C. Weaver, W-E-A-V-E-R, who was Harvard MIT Division of Health Sciences and Technology, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Cambridge, Massachusetts, 02139, describing that when you did this type of electrification, electroporation happened, and whatever was in your blood plasma went directly into the cells. That means that things that are mildly toxic, like vitamin A, beta-carotene, niacin, many other things, will poison you. And if you wonder about this, think back to pre-1910. Most of the mothers in America would go to Sears Roebuck or the pharmacy down on the corner, and they would buy soothing syrup. They would give this to their babies. The babies would never cry. The babies would sleep. They'd be good little babies. When the Harrison Act came in, morphine sulfate was outlawed. And now we had hundreds of thousands of dope-addicted babies on the bad stuff. And it took almost a generation to wipe out that addiction to heroin, morphine, etc., etc. Coca-Cola, the real thing, had Coke in it. Drugs were sold rapidly. Women could buy arsenic, arsenate of lead, from Sears or any pharmacy. You'll see it in their 1910 catalogs. Would take this and it would make their cheeks rosy. The vasodilation. And they'd look better than if they had put on rouge and powder. You can buy garlic in any store. That's one of the worst poisons. The doctors that I've trained to get their patients off garlic, the patients, usually women, report they don't have these dull headaches every day of their lives any longer. They have attention spans at 2 o'clock and 3 in the afternoon where they normally couldn't even focus on the computer. Don't believe it when people tell you how good garlic is for you. Don't believe it when Coca-Cola had cocaine in it. Don't believe it when any drugstore was selling you morphine sulfate, the simple soothing syrup for your babies. Many of these things will be outlawed in the future, but if you do electroporation, there is a genuine danger that these could affect you. Now, our papers, I'm going to leave this with you too, Mark.
Dr. Beck, what kind of emotional stuff will happen during the detox with this?
It is almost like having PMS. Your body is under attack. It's throwing off poisons. People who do lymph cleaning can tell you about this. People who do colonics can tell you what a tremendous sense of relief they feel after these are just facts. You have to go through this. You've grown up with these boogers since you were a child. A baby 4 hours old who's breathing the air in the hospital has got Candida albicans because of his respiratory system in 4 hours. Your body is riddled with 140 known and perhaps 20 unknown viruses. If you live in Africa, it's riddled with about 500. These have to go somewhere when they're neutralized. They're not killed, they're just neutralized so that they can no longer attach to any receptor sites. The outer protein layer, it's now been proven by a number of high institutions, and you will never, ever, ever read about it, because here's under $1.50 cure for anything from tuberculosis to leprosy to Ebola that was previously unknown as far as a cure went. But it is here now. The millennium in medicine again started on March 11th of 1990, and you can read about it. There are so many things I want to cover here tonight, but I think I'm going to show you something. And after this, we can take a stretch. When I came here, Yeah. My mentor here, Mark, tell him take a break. Oh, okay, take a break now and get some coffee. When we come back, we'll do some magic for you. We'll use this laser light to show you water before and after treatment. So,
great. Yes. A couple quick announcements, please. I believe the cafeteria closes about 8:45. So if any of you want to run over and get a burger or something, or a couple hot dogs, that's the place to do it. The chemotherapy is free. That'll come a few years later. What the hell? So please, I do ask you a couple quick rules, folks. It is cold and it is wet. Please walk slowly. The room, as you can see, there's never been this many people in Guthrie Hall. So please take your time. There are cameras. There are cables. I do ask you to please take your time when you walk. Second rule: please do not ask Bob or myself or anyone questions right now. He will probably answer them in the second part when he gives the demonstration. So please do not approach the table. Please do not congratulate him or anything, or throw things at him or myself. Keep the garlic away. So do not ask us any questions. Let Bob take a break. Let myself take a break. Let Ms. Stillwell take a break, and everyone else. So please save your questions until afterwards. After he comes back, give us our demonstration. Yes, ma'am. Okay.
I want to say something. If you want any more information about anything, write down the numbers up on the board. Okay?
Great. Okay, folks, it is 8:20 by that clock. We will begin. We will start again at 8:35. Please do not approach the table. No questions yet. We'll see you at 8:35 for the second half. Thank you very much. Yeah, can you put the paper there? Anyone needs to sign in that are in any of my classes. It'll be on this table, the brown table on that. If you could move the paper, please. Over to the brown table. Brown table over there. Please stay away from this area, okay? All right, thank you.
That's cool. We'll get them all. Are we still recording? Oh, yeah. Wow.
Had some word changes. So if you want any, $2 for those. All you're getting is about 20 words that are different on the last page, but all the rest of it's identical. So anyone who wants some cheap copies, we're going to leave some with Mark for the library here. Yay, Mark. Mark was my bodyguard at a couple of out-of-town conferences. I finally acquired a status symbol in my old age. He did a beautiful job. He came in the room, looked under the beds. There weren't any teeny boppers. There wasn't anybody hanging out on the ledge or in the shower. So, wow, I never thought of that, Mark. You got me in there. I'm going to move around. You better watch out.
Okay, I'll try and get out of these people's way.
Okay. Now, I'm going to be going over here, so get the camera on some of the small stuff when I do.
Yes, sir.
You got to work for a living for a few minutes.
Yes, sir.
We've been collecting the best possible medical information for about the last 40 years. As Mark pointed out, I was national president of the U.S. Psychotronics Association for several years in the 80s, and I got to know some people with absolutely fascinating talents. And if I never had any talent anywhere in my life, I picked up some by osmosis from Galen Hieronymus and Jerry Gallimore and Bob Butlick and Tom Bearden. We were all members of this club, and we didn't know whether we were bullshitting each other or bullshitting ourselves, but we sure stretched our brains. And out of all of this dross, out of all of these tailings, came a lot of information which is immensely valuable. Our paper, the last half of the paper, is devoted on how you can make your own silver colloids. Anybody in here been buying silver colloids in bottles and jars? No, good. You can make it for 1/10 of a penny a gallon. And we're going to do some right here and show you how. And this colloid has been known for nearly a century, and certainly since the late 1800s, to absolutely cure over 650 known diseases. UCLA did tests on this with cultures. They found that colloid, penicillin by the way, that got Sir Arthur Fleming a big prize, only cures 8 diseases, staph and strep, but it doesn't do that anymore because these are strain resistant. Colloid kills 650 within 8 minutes. You don't need to take it 4 times a day for 10 days, which is what your doctor tells you on ampicillin, penicillin, Cipro, etc. We're going to show you how to make the most powerful medicine known. If you're traveling in Egypt or Mexico, you carry a little thing in your shirt pocket, make colloids, you can drink anything. Never get sick. Your animals will stop going to the veterinarians. The places I eat, the hostesses come up to me almost every day I eat there, and they have one of these take-out coffee polystyrene cups, and I make her free colloid. One lady was raising thoroughbred Persian cats. They've been so inbred they were at the vet every month. The cats are totally healthy now, haven't been to a veterinarian in over a year. The cat will not drink water unless Sherry puts a teaspoon of colloid in the water. The cats must know something. So let's make some right now. This was a glass of tap water that I got out of the sink in the kitchen when I came here. Right out of the tap. I filtered it through a paper towel because it was so filthy. This is a lacer. Where is the darn thing? I'm not going to let this light get into your eyes. I'm going to shoot it above your heads. But this is what tap water looks like. I want you to look at the beam, B-E-A-M, as it goes through this 3 inches of water. And if there are any particles in the water, it will backscatter the coherent light from this 670 nanometer laser diode. This is called the Tyndall, capital T-Y-N-D-A-L-L effect, after the physicist who discovered it. It's the way dark field microscopy works. And this is a horrible example of before. And for those of you listening to the audio section, what we're doing is shining a little $29 laser light through a glass of tap water before we make colloids out of it. And we've tested this. Even the people in the back row can see something here. Now we're going to take a little electrode set that has 2 pieces of solid silver wire. Never, ever, ever use sterling silver wire that you get at a jewelry store because sterling silver has 18% nickel, the metal nickel, which is a deadly poison when it electrolytically gets into the water. Use only 999 fine, or 9999, that means 99.99% pure silver. I'm going to put the 2 wires in this glass of ordinary tap water, plug it into one of the plant growth stimulators, turn it on, leave it for a couple of minutes. Which way is east, Mark? East? Oh, sorry. Okay. We've got to do this very, very carefully and sanctify this athame. This athame is half a penny's worth of plastic that's used for cutting things at McDonald's. So, Raphael, Mikhail, Gabriel, etc. Now let's say that this athame has been sanctified, and we're going to stir it. We're going to use it for stirring this water occasionally. And what we're doing is mixing the particles that are 0.001 micron to 0.015. You could prove this by taking the water that you have produced as silver colloid to any laboratory that does assay work for the Environmental Protective Agency. They will, for $30, give you a written report of how much colloid is in the water, how many parts per million, and what the particle size is. If the particles are too big, the particles won't go into your cells. They won't penetrate the membranes in the stomach, the esophagus, the colon. If they're too small, they'll get in everything, and you'll have to take acidophilus and various things, Salivarius, to put the good flora and fauna back in your gut. I think we've been in here about 2 minutes. This is the same glass of water. We're not doing magic here. Now, can you see the beam?
Yeah.
I'll try to move around it, Mark. This again is Tyndall effect, Rayleigh effect. It's a backscatter of these billions of particles of pure metallic silver that are suspended in this glass of water and will stay intact for about 2 years. If you shake the bottle before you use it, all colloid will settle out. This would be about $90 worth of colloid at the pharmacy. No, this would be about $60 worth at the pharmacy or health food store. To your health. No, you cannot overdose. No disease has ever been known to become tolerant to silver. The silver interrupts the respiration cycle of the disease. And if you have friends who have terminal diseases, this, combined with the blood cleaning, will absolutely, totally cure them. Pardon me, cause spontaneous remission, loss of symptoms. The water from which this colloid can be made, distilled water, costs 800 times more than the most powerful medicine known to science and medicine. A gallon of distilled water, Arrowhead, Sparklets at the supermarket, costs about 80 cents in Los Angeles. The colloid that we just made cost 1/10 of a penny for battery replacement. You'll have to replace those batteries in a year or two. And silver. Multiply 0.1 times 80 cents for the water, 0.1 cents for the silver and the batteries. The water cost 800 times more than the best medicine known to science and medicine. I'll repeat that because it's true. And the people in our little group that get together, we call it the Breakfast Club, at a cafe in Santa Ana on Tuesday mornings. Only one of these persons out of about 20 has had the flu, and that lasted for about an hour. And they don't take vaccines. Nobody in this group has missed a day's work with pneumonia, flu, colds, viruses. Their kids aren't sick, their cats aren't sick. They're not going to the vet all the time simply because they put a little bit of this colloid in the drinking water. There are farmers in this county, Ventura, that are feeding this to their cows, to their horses, to their farm animals, their chickens, and those are the healthiest animals they have ever seen. They do not have the attrition rate of all of the people in the same neighborhood, and they won't tell what they're doing. The palm trees, which are dying in a Southern California town, many of these were cured when they sprayed the foliage and the roots with silver colloid. This is marvelous medicine, and if you get the paper, and I highly recommend that you do, it'll tell you exactly how to make it. Now let me show you the cheapest possible way to save your lives if you have a number of incurable diseases. This is a 9-volt alkaline energizer or Duracell. It costs $1.32 at the Price Club. It costs maybe a couple of bucks at the liquor store. You buy one of these. Surely you can afford that. You get a little clip lead at Radio Shack or any electronic supply store. You connect this clip lead through a single pole slide switch, on, off, and then to wires. This is pure 999 fine silver, and you put it through a little grain of wheat light bulb. So let's do that. Let's hook it up. The switch is off right now, so that if these electrodes touch, you're not burning out the battery. We'll turn the switch on, and now when you short the electrodes, the load is taken up by the little grain of wheat light bulb. So you're still not shorting out the battery, you're just wasting the current in the light bulb. If you carry this thing in your shirt pocket, and you're traveling around the Middle East, as I've done, you have to buy bottled water if you're in Egypt, many of the other places. The natives are acclimated to the many, many parasites, viruses, germs that live in the water. But baby, it's only a day before you're on Lomotil that you buy from the local doctors for a big price, and you've got the Montezuma's revenge. In Mexico, you have the same problem. If you carry one of these, put it in the water, drink it in the morning, you'll never get sick. And anything that's in your blood isn't going to leave there unless you've got the colloid in your blood. We don't suggest that you make physiological saline, which is 9,000 parts per million of NaCl, sodium chloride, in distilled water, Ringer's solution. Any of you who are nurses or doctors or health professionals know about this. All you need is a $1.32 battery, a 15-cent clip-on lead, a 10-cent switch, and a 50-cent grain of wheat light bulb, and you're making the best medicine, better medicine than you can buy. Cipro, C-I-P-R-O, is the broadest spectrum antibiotic known, or at least it was a couple of years ago. If you go to the drugstore, it's $3 a pill. You normally get about $100 worth if you're trying to cure something. You have liver, kidney infection. The silver colloid is 1/10 of a cent a gallon. A gallon will last you for a long, long time. You store that gallon in a California prune juice, dark brown bottle, cheapest thing you can buy. You get half a gallon of it for practically nothing. Pour the prune juice down the sink. Rinse the bottle. Put the colloid in the bottle. Do not refrigerate it, and you've got the best medicine known to science. And that's why we've devoted about half of our present paper on how many parts per million you get per degree Fahrenheit per ounce of water. All these things that some of you technocrats like I am want to know about colloid. We've had colloid from people who are charging hundreds of dollars a bottle, analyzed. And because he's been attacking me, I think I can mention him. Wayne Water, Wayne Rowland, has no colloid in it at all. Zero. When I confronted him publicly, he said it has 0.046 parts per million. I said, Wayne, when I buy silver colloid, I want some silver in that bottle. I don't want homeopathic paychecks, a penny a month, or colloid that's 1,000x titration and there's not one single molecule of he said, but I put the note B flat. I play it on an electric organ, and I put that music into the water, and it has marvelous heat. Forget it. Take the paper, go home, and make your own stuff, and it will work every time. That's why the FDA has come after me. They've come to my door with drawn guns at 3 o'clock in the morning, trying to intimidate me. Because I'm selling nothing. I've never taken a penny from the people who are building these things. I'm still here. I'm free to tell you about it. We have them a little bit baffled here. And I like it fine, thanks to Mark and others. Now, we'll do some more magic. We're going to have to close in on this and allow about 14-inch headroom on that coil. After you have taken the 3 weeks at about 2 hours a day, put the milliamperes into your flesh and the microamperes into your blood, you'll find that the AIDS, particularly, can hibernate for several years in the lymph tissue. In other words, you might be totally free on a PCR test, polymerase chain reaction. You know, Carrie Mullis won the Nobel Prize on discovering this test in 1993. You might reinfect yourself with many of these things that live, for example, multiple sclerosis, herpes. The boogers live in the nerve sheaths. The circulation can very seldom get to this. The circulation of the blood can't reach these, no matter how much antibiotic you take. Forget it. But how can you reach it? With electricity. Getting electricity into the blood is very simple, and I showed you how to do this an hour and a half ago. You put it on your wrists. We used to put it on the feet to keep the electricity out of the heart in case you have arrhythmia, tachycardia, you're wearing a heart pacer. Now, by using these 2 ulnar arteries, you have a closed loop up here where they join, back down through the hand and up here again. And if you're wearing a heart pacer, you cannot interrupt the demand rate, the normal function of that heart pacer. And this is totally safe. First, do no harm. I used myself as the guinea pig on this for a couple of years before I dared publish. I wanted to make sure there were no side effects, and there is none. How do you get the boogers out of the nerve sheaths, out of the lymph, when there are several hundred of these lymph nodes in your neck, in your groin, alongside your spine in the back? Your lymph nodes, and we stole this from Gray's Anatomy, are fully delineated on page 8. This is from Gray's Anatomy, pages 624 to 633, and it shows most of the major lymph nodes in the body. How are you going to get the electricity in there? Are you going to stick needles in your skin? No. You're going to get infected. You'll need an IV nurse, intravenous nurse. You'll need antibiotics or colloids to sterilize, or chlorine, etc. By the way, there is no chlorine in Clorox or Purex. It only uses the name Clorox. If you'll read the label, it's sodium hypochlorite, CHLORITE. It's kind of a fraud, and they're giving this stuff to AIDS patients to clean their works, their needles, the intravenous drug users. Fine, that's their lifestyle. It isn't mine. But we have all of these hundreds of lymph nodes. How do you get to them? Any engineers in here know that if you have a time-varying magnetic field, HB vector, in Maxwell's equations, letter H, letter B, and this field varies in time, you cannot, repeat, cannot use a permanent magnet, put it on parts of your body, and expect to get any results. The only things moving past that magnetic field are the very slow circulation of the blood, which generates microvolts, which is not enough to do the blood cleaning, to get rid of all parasites, all bacteria, all germs, all viruses, all pathogens, all microbes, everything. And it definitely does. You take a coil. This coil for engineers is 2.5 millihenries. We bought it at a mail order house in Chicago, MCM. It cost about $10. It's used as a crossover network in the high quality audio. The high frequency hit the coil and they're absorbed and they don't go through, so they put this coil in series with the woofer, and the woofer doesn't have to work as hard. We buy a $22, this is a Vivitar brand strobe light, electronic flash. This is my great-great-great-great-great-grandson. I invented these things in 1945 to 1952, and I have the patents on them, and my boss made the money, I didn't. You disconnect one of the wires going to the flash tube. You put in a little lamp cord here, or hi-fi speaker wire, in series with the flash tube and the coil. That means that the capacitor in this unit will charge up. It takes about 10 seconds when the batteries are low. It takes about 3 seconds when the batteries are fresh. And every time you push this button, this test button, when the red light comes on, you have dumped about 17 watt seconds, joules, J-O-U-L-E-S, of current into this coil. You have generated a field of 19,000 Gauss. The formula for you engineers is 1/2 CV squared, where C is in microfarads and V is in kilovolts. And if you measure the capacitor in here, and the voltage, 133 volts, at about 200 and 300 mics, you'll find that you've got 17 joules going into that coil every time I push the button. That means that if you hold this coil, hey, dynamic mic. This is not acoustical. You're getting the magnetic flux, which happens to be 10 micro-millionths of a second. That's fun. Hope I don't blow the coil over the moon. I made the first one of these in 1946 when I was playing with strobes. I'll tell you a secret because the statute of limitations has run out. I took one of these coils in a pocket-sized strobe. I'd put a penny in the parking meters in Los Angeles. Don't forget, World War II was still on. I'd get my 6 minutes or whatever you got for a penny then. I'd hold a coil against the parking meter. I'd push the button, and the back EMF would blow the hairspring. They were all on timers, so you'd get your 6 minutes, and then it would put up the red flag. I'd blow the hairspring out of the parking meter, and I could park for days for a penny. Yeah! Life of crime started. Now, how do we know that anything that's happening in this coil is going to affect your lymph, your adenoids, the organs in your body, where you're germinating an awful lot of the adversary, the alien life forms that live in your own body, in your own blood? We'll just do this. Oh, whoops, I've got my room key in my pocket, and that's magnetic. It'll wipe out your floppy disks, your credit cards, anything that's magnetic medium, so I won't do it on me right now, but I normally do. Now let's do some magic here. I don't know what this mason jar was, but I picked it up in the kitchen a minute ago. We're going to set it upside down on the table. This marvelous scientific device is like the apple that fell on Sir Isaac Newton's head. Happens to be a 1-inch diameter fender washer. I've tied a string to it because I'm tired of chasing it around the room and on the floor. I'm going to put this washer on this coil. And it always learns in the water. Now watch that on 3, Mike. 1, 2, 3. We're going to do it again. I didn't allow quite enough string here, but you got the idea. 1, 2. Once more. 3. What's happened here is we have that very short, 10 microseconds long pulse of magnetic energy coming out of the coil at 19,000 gauss, G-A-U-S-S, 19 kilogauss, which generates a back EMF. EMF stands for electromotive force. In any organ, any tissue, any blood, any bone marrow, anywhere, if you hit the thymus, don't forget the T cells, the T helper cells, the killer cells are growing in your thymus. How do we purify that thymus? Hold the coil, push the button. How did I grow my hair back? Baby, I was bald. I can't go to a conference where people have seen me 3 years ago without having some bastard walk up and pull my hair. Bob, I just lost a $50 bet. We thought you were wearing a toupee. Well, I'm not. I said, well, give me some. I'm the guy that grew the hair back. And all you do there, look, it goes right through my hollow head. That's the magnetic field. It totally passes through the body. Do it again, this is fun. Same as whether my head's in it or not. And that back EMF, electromotive force, generates a surge of about 1 milliampere, hundreds of times stronger than that necessary to use in the blood, in any tissue that's still alive. As long as you're not a mummy and totally dehydrated, as long as you have blood or saline solution in your body fluids, you're about 80% by weight of salt water. This device will get rid, cure, anything that continues to germinate in the nerve sheathings like MS, LS, herpes, etc., or HIV. And then you have a permanent cure. These people aren't going to come down with their own self-infection due to germinating, hibernating cells in a couple of years. It's that simple. And have you learned any of this in school? Have any one of you heard any of this from your doctors? No. Don't forget, a patient cured is a customer lost. They can charge $50,000 to $200,000 for surgery and chemotherapy. You can cure it for the price of a package of Wrigley's chewing gum. It is that simple. And it's been done over and over and over. And our main problem with this is unbelievability. It is so simple, so cheap, so obvious. It will stand the test of time with any engineer that you know. How do you generate a back EMF? Well, you make a time varying field. You have a question? Brain parasites? 3 weeks. Yeah, you might. No, I won't suggest that you try the carotid arteries and keep it below about 4 hertz. Well, let me talk about brain problems and cancer in just a moment. This is the most fascinating story that I know. To cure anything, you need to do 3 things. You need to make silver colloid, which we've shown you how to do. All of the modern machines will make colloid as well as stimulate your marijuana plants and the Proposition 215 here. Thank God we're getting some enlightenment in our culture. Tobacco is 4.5 times more addictive than heroin and far more dangerous to life. Marijuana is totally benign. Never mind the political statement. Okay, we've showed you how to make colloids. We've showed you how, and we have a circuit diagram. We have 2 of them, in fact. We have the old Model T on page 4, and the latest model on page 10 of the last sheet. Either one of these will work beautifully We have a parts list. If you don't know what a resistor is, you take that parts list to Radio Shack, put it on the counter, give me one of those and one of, oh, that's a resistor. Well, which end of the soldering iron do you hold? You know, you'll get it done. We'd rather you built your own. You don't have to buy anything. This is the beauty of this treatment. Nobody has to sell you anything, and it works. AZT and DDI and DD, all of these things do not work. Ozone does not work. These hundreds of herbs that are in these clinics do not work. They might detoxify you a little. You might look like you're getting better, but you die, baby. And the hundreds of people we've done on this, about 2,000 actually, are now symptom-free. They're back at work. And this is the truth, and we have the laboratory tests to prove it.
You got testimonials?
Oh, yes, we have dozens of people who've come forward. At my last lecture, were you there when that guy grabbed the microphone? Oh, man, I'd never seen him before in my whole life. Grabbed the microphone. He says, I'm 80 years old. I'm an attorney. I was given up for dead. My cancer had metastasized into every organ in my limb. I was sent home to write my will and die. That was a year ago. I read about your thing in, I guess it was the Townsend Letter for Doctors. It's been published in PACE. It's been published in Explorer. It's been published in 73s. Dozens of magazines have reported, republished this paper. He said, I built one. After 3 weeks, I was up. He said, I was under intensive care at home. I had a 24-hour-a-day series of nurses coming in. He said, I'm jogging 5 miles a day now. And what did he say? I'm working 16 hours a day to catch up for all the time that I lost when I was dying. And he wanted to thank me and shake my hand. And then they cut off the tape. But that's life. But we've had hundreds of people come forward now. Herpes, lupus, AIDS, hundreds of AIDS patients. And yet the AIDS act up people try to kill me when I go to New York. They offered to burn down the Hotel New Yorker and the Hotel Pennsylvania if they allowed me to speak there to a lot of doctors who'd come there to hear this. And they finally bloodied me, as I mentioned. When I got to the men's room at the New Jersey airport, I was shocked that I had blood running down my face and on my shirt. I didn't think the guy had hurt me. I was sort of the spur of the moment. And I thought, these damn New Yorkers are really cool. Not one person looked me in the eye and said, man, you've got blood on your face. So I got in the stall and I put on a sweater and I rolled the shirt up, threw it in my bag and washed my face and looked okay. I got on the plane. I didn't look like a terrorist. But anyway, one of the problems with this, 85% of the world's population has a death wish. They're playing two things. They're playing hiding. They're playing waiting to die. Most of the people in our culture were from one of the 7 major religions, Islam, Judeo, Christian, and many others. They all came from the same roots, Father Abraham, etc. They all teach that at one time you walked with God in the garden, you were expelled from eating of the tree of the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil. Anyway, you fell from grace. The cherubim were put there with fiery swords to keep you from getting back. Now you have to work by the sweat of your brow. You're born under this original sin, and the only way you're going to get home free and get to heaven is to suffer a lot and be meek and humble. And that was put in you before you were 4.5 years old. So it sticks, baby. If you're a Catholic, you're not going to change. If you're a Presbyterian, you might not change. If you're a Muslim, you will never change. But all of these people think that they're going to get another gold star on their gluteus maximus and go to heaven if they suffer enough. If you got on the Queen for a Day show and you've got 10 sick children at home and a husband who just broke his leg and can't go to work, guess who gets the washing machine? Because the lady right next to you only had 9 sick children and her husband is still getting around somehow. It's the person who has the most suffering that picks up the most charge, that picks up the most secondary gains. Here's George, a 60-year-old aerospace engineer at McDonnell Douglas, who gets cancer. He gets to go to bed and read. His wife is bringing him chicken soup. The kids are being respectful and not screaming in his presence. His neighbors are coming around, oh, isn't it awful that you've got terminal cancer? That man has got secondary gains. He knows that if he gets well, he's got to go back there and compete with the younger engineers who just got out of college and the people who run computers better than I ever will, etc. These people want to die. They think that the only relief from this planet of painful endeavor is death, and if they haven't sinned, they might go to heaven. And then they'll have 4 wives if you're Muslim, or 25 if you're Mormon. I don't know. I don't want to get into this. But it's always better. It's the promise of arrival. And if he were damn perfect, he'd be in heaven or hell to begin with. So I guess Carl Simonton, when he was married to Stephanie Simonton, the radiologist, found out about secondary gains. He would give people the suggestion that the white knights, the T cells, the white cells in your blood, are knights on shining armor, riding around with lances, spearing those cancer cells. And those people would change that meditation, that hypnosis, to make those, the black knights, would let the black knights win that made more cancer cells. So he developed a test. What could you be getting out of having cancer? And they said, no, I'm not getting anything out of this. Well, what could your neighbor be getting? Oh, he's staying in bed and he's reading and his insurance policy is feeding him and his wife's bringing him chicken soup, all the wonderful things he's got, secondary gains, and that's where we're at, kids. If you tell 100 people about this, about 15 of them will believe you and read the paper and try it. The other 85 are going to demand more proof. They want to die. They don't want anything to interrupt these secondary gains. The AIDS patients are getting free food, free massages, basket weaving classes. I've talked to the Gay and Lesbian Support Center on Garden Grove Boulevard, 13229 Garden Grove Boulevard, Santa Ana. They throw me out. Oh, well, you bum, there isn't any cure for HIV. I said, won't you people try it? Surely you have somebody here who wants to live. Oh, no, we're getting along fine with Burroughs Welcome. As I say, I've been bloodied by ACTA. They're being paid. It used to be Burroughs Welcome. It's now Glaxo Welcome. I've got stories out the kazoo on what people will do to maintain their secondary gains. We had one guy, well, I shouldn't mention him because he's world famous. But one night he got on the Hollywood freeway driving in the wrong direction and committed suicide by running head-on into another car, but he didn't call it suicide, and his insurance policy paid off his family. Killed 4 people in the incoming car simply because we'd taken his cancer away from him and he didn't want to live. That happened a long time ago using a different piece of apparatus. This has happened over and over and over and over. You just might well get used to death in Texas that a lot of the people, 85% of them that hear about this, are going to find some reason for putting it off and never trying it. Oh, we want to see more studies. Well, look, here's 100 more. Oh, that's not enough. We want to see 1,000 studies, and this can go on indefinitely. Like people who were talking about saucers when I was a kid. Well, why don't we have a visual sighting here and a radar sighting and an airline captain that got a pic? We do. Oh, well, we need some more reports. They just don't want to believe in anything like this. Take back your power. And everything you need to know is in this paper. And we have enough left there of the outvoted paper. And I really suggest that you get them. I'm going to leave a bunch with Mark for his library. Now, I think we'll talk about immortal blood for a minute. This is too startling, but it's provable. Anything that I'm telling you tonight can be proven. Mike Seiler, S-E-I-L-L-E-R, Boulder, Colorado, went to Michael Coyle, Dr. C-O-Y-L-E in Boulder, who is one of the most famous dark field microscopists in America. He spends half of the year going around from city to city, teaching naturopaths, homeopaths, medical doctors, chiropractors to use dark field microscopy for diagnostic purposes. He knows whereof he speaks. He's written the manuals that are in your medical libraries. He publishes a teaching manual that he gives with his several $100 course over a weekend that tells you what you're looking at and what to do about it. He pricked Michael Seiler's finger, put this drop of blood on the bottom of a microscope slip, the cover slide, thin glass that goes on top. Put that on a microscope slide, wrote the date and Mike's name on it. They were both named Mike. He looked at it, went all around the field with the substage positioner, and said, well, I didn't do this right. Let's try another finger. Drop of blood, new slide. This is very strange. Let me try your earlobe. Drop of blood, new slide. You said there's no background clutter in your blood. What the hell have you been doing? Mike says, well, I've been using the blood cleaner. I built it myself. Well, you don't have any parasites. I don't see any viruses. He couldn't see viruses. That required higher magnification, electron microscopy. But I don't see pathogens, bacteria, germs, no rods, nothing. So they puzzled over it and said, well, my God, somebody's finally doing something here that works. Better give me some of those. I've got some terminal cancer patients. He did. Blood is a toxic substance in most states. It requires a man who has a license to come around and collect these used slides, like once a month, take them and incinerate them so that disease won't be spread around. Hospitals used to dump their junk in the ocean before the law was passed. Mike Coyle looked at his box of toxic slides. The man hadn't been around that month. I think he was sick. And 3 slides close to the top were still orange color instead of brown and dark. And he looked at those things, and he picked one up out of the waste box, put it on his microscope stage. The blood was still alive. He looked at the name, and it was our good friend Mike Seiler. And he called Mike and he said, Mike, a very strange thing has happened. The half-life of blood is just a few days. Most normal blood is dead. It's cremated. It is fibrinogen reaction. In other words, it is clotted. It is oxidized. It is turned dark brown and clumped within 4 days. And your blood was taken 27 days ago, and it's still alive. This is a true story, and you can verify it with the people, and they're in the telephone books in Boulder, Colorado. And so he threw them back in the waste material. 1 month after that, it's now 30 days plus 27. It's 57 days later. Those slides are still orange and a little spot in the center, about a half a millimeter in diameter. That blood had circled the wagons, stopped the evaporation process of the air escaping underneath the cover slip, and they were still swimming around alive. So Mike and Mike got tremendously excited about this. They coined the phrase immortal blood. Now, how long are you going to live if your blood is immortal and your immune system is restored and the adversary is banished from your body, like the body is the temple of the Holy Spirit? God lives within, and so does the adversary. What's going to happen if you stop looking for him in the whorehouses and the gambling joints and the sin parlors and look inside of your own blood? This is a metaphysical friend of mine talking. You can do it in 21 days, 2 hours a day. And what happens? Amazingly, the people who had terminal cancer, who were inoperable, cancer that metastasized, were well. And this created a tremendous flap in the state of New Jersey, where a few oncologists, cancer specialists, are using this technology. So we got together in conference calls, and on page 9 and 8, I think, of your paper in the second half, It gives you the opinion of the oncologist, not Bob Beck. I'm not a medical professional. I'm a physicist. I was an engineer. I've done a lot of things in my life, from photojournalism to girl watching, but I'm basically a physicist. I was reminded that cadavers, the corpses that medical students carve up in medical school, may have died on Main Street with a bottle of Thunderbird and a brown paper bag under his arm. When his body is sold to the medical college, soaked in formaldehyde, and they begin the dissecting, they find, without doubt, this man has had cancer about 10 times during his lifetime. But his friends, if he has any, say he's never been to a doctor, he can't afford it. The cancer has mysteriously vanished. What happened? Any doctor will tell you that when your immune system is restored, when your immune system is intact, your immune system manufactures 2,000 known neuropeptides. Among these, it can be verified by chromatography and electroporation at any medical laboratory that does chromatography, which means they put the blood in an electrical field on blotting paper. The proteins will precipitate out, and they read from the, like a spectrum analysis, what's present in the blood and what isn't. There are two specific neuropeptides that seldom appear in normal blood, and this is interleukin and interferon 2 and 3. How many of you heard that these are specifics for cancer? Right. Good audience. That's, for people who don't see the audience, was about 11, maybe 12 people in the room. When your immune system is unloaded, your body begins reproducing all of these essential neuropeptides, which are specifics. If you're dying of cancer and your immune system is fighting this day and night, you do not have these. They cannot be detected in your spinal fluid or your blood. When you get rid of these adversaries in the blood, you have them again. What has healed that cancer? Maybe it is the interleukin and the interferon and about 2,000 others, according to Norm Cousins. I knew him before he died. This isn't Norm Shealy, it's Norm Cousins. He used to be with biomedical in UCLA. That was his last job. And it was about 6 years ago, otherwise we could easily have saved him. We could have saved Tim Leary. All of these people who proclaimed they wanted to die had cancer. Human interferon and interleukin would cost about $50,000 a dose. And you'd need about 10 or 12 doses. Who has got $500,000 to put in medicine that your immune system can manufacture all by itself if it's healthy? Just like the most powerful medicine known to man is 1/10 of a penny per gallon. For the package of Wrigley's chewing gum, $1.08, you can restore the immune system, which happens to be able to handle any known cancer. Now, these doctors in New Jersey are terribly worried about this, because this might mean the end of very lucrative practices that are thoroughly FDA and medically approved, which means surgery, chemotherapy, radiation, etc. But we have dozens and dozens of people now whose biopsies are completely clean. One of them's in the room tonight, whose CAT scans are totally clean. They cannot find one cancer cell in their bodies, just because they have restored their immune system. So one of the serendipities that I did not believe, I could not believe, because this was too simple. I was looking for extremely complicated processes. I was looking for a vaccine that would take another 10 years to produce. Like a gentleman asked me, why won't vaccines and antibodies work against HIV? His answer, he answered his own question, because they mutate too fast. The minute the HIV and many other adversaries in your blood detect these vaccines, they will mutate, and the vaccine is worthless, and you're back at start. But they have no defense against blood electrification. They have no defense against silver colloids. They have no defense against magnetic fields. Everything that you could possibly ask, in the last 5 years, we've compiled the questions. We've tried to put in this paper. We suggest that if you can't afford one, you go up and ask for one for free, and Jane will be delighted to give it to you. And no, I'm not profiting from this. I have to keep saying it because people can't understand this. I am selling a few prototype units that one of the manufacturers is giving me for my cost. But that's the only thing I've done. I've supplied all the hospitals that have done this work with free units. All they have to do is give me their stacks of reports, which we have, proving that this is the only thing known which consistently cures HIV. And why can't I just share these openly? Why can't I pass them around the room? I had to sign 5 pages of legal documents, which started out patient confidentiality, non-disclosure agreement. Until these studies are published in peer-reviewed medical journals, that means the New England Journal of Medicine, Lancet, AMA journals, JAMA, until they're published, it would be like giving this information to the National Enquirer. And yet every person I talk to, I'll be right there, says, I want more proof. Well, those are the people that are trying to shoot this thing down, believe it or not. That's their unconscious death wish. Yes, sir?
You tested this on a quote-unquote healthy body?
Yeah, I'm perfectly healthy now, and I've been using this thing 2 hours a day.
Started out with a healthy body.
Well, I was bald and I was fat, but I was healthy. I'm not bald and I'm not fat, and man, is my libido off the scale. I'm in my 70s, but I can lick any guy in the bar now. I think I can. That's paranoia. But anyway, it works. There are no side effects. The only side effects are like this lady brought up, detoxification and electroporation, and all of that is explained in your paper. And just get rid of garlic in your diet. Yes, sir?
So the magnetic coil process, is it possible to use regular alternating current instead of pulse current?
The maximum current you can get through there without heating it up is just 1 or 2 joules. Like the repeating strobes in psychedelic nightclubs, flash, 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 flash. If you measure those, they're less than 1 joule, 1 watt second. You need a minimum of 17 and a half and an optimum of 35 joules to cure anything, because that determines the amount of back EMF. The answer is no, you cannot use AC. But if you want to spend $7,000 for a magnetotron, which is made in Germany, or $5,000 for a Centurion, which is made in Canada, and this is all in your paper on page 6, you can get a unit that is about 1/100th the power of one that you can build for about $25, and that's the truth. Yes, sir.
Do you think these studies you were just talking about will be published in the mainstream
The
medical?
only reason I've cooperated with 3 hospitals in my area and a clinic and an institution is I want the data. A lot of doctors demand proof, and so do I. Until I saw hundreds of these studies, I couldn't believe it was that effective. I thought if this thing is 50% effective, it's 49% better than anything on the market. This is a miracle. And the first negative report we got last year in August, the lab wouldn't return it to us because they knew there wasn't a cure for HIV. We're fighting that much prejudice in the community, etc. And dozens of people have come forward. Mark has heard 1 or 2 at my presentation at the Whole Life Expo in Los Angeles, Hilton Hotel. And they come out of the woodwork. They say, I was dying. And look at me now, I'm back at work. And this is true. People say, well, why hasn't someone come forward with this? We have dozens of people who said, you may use my name. The reason I showed the gentleman this paper is that Michael gave me permission to use his paper. He was one of the only people on the study that hasn't gone back to the bathhouses, hasn't gone back to Haiti or Brazil and playing with the young boys. They knew that if we cure them once, we can cure them again. So they're out there with the identical lifestyles before this plague came down on us. Now, a funny thing happened on the way to the forum, and that is that a number of these people had reduced HIV, but it did not go to zero. We had 3,600,000, etc. They now have several thousand, but they have absolutely no symptoms. So maybe Peter Duesberg is right. The AIDS is only a secondary or tertiary effect of HIV, and it's the lifestyle, the poppers, the dope, the drugs, hundreds of reasons, the 29 opportunistic diseases that are defined arbitrarily as being full-blown AIDS. If you have Kaposi's sarcoma, if you have pneumonia, if you have brain yama, yama, yama. And hey, we've got to wind this up pretty soon. I think there were some other questions back. Let's open it to questions now. Yes, sir.
I've got Borrelia burgdorferi, Lyme disease, and I've heard a lot of silver foil treatments talk about 650 diseases that will cure. I see that in every...
You're talking about Dr. Mason, who's selling silver protein, which is toxic. He won't look me in the eye. You make silver colloid, not silver nitrate, silver chloride, ad infinitum, and you will cure Lyme's disease, or I'll give you triple your money back.
So silver foil will work on Borrelia burgdorferi?
You need the silver colloid, and you need the blood cleaner for about 5 months, and yes, it will work. I'll put my reputation on the line, and my reputation is sacred to me. Yes, ma'am.
Can someone with a copper-based IUD use the blood purification?
Thousands and thousands of people have used it, and I don't have a specific answer to your question. I wish I knew, and if you find out, let me know. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
You said that the blood clearing device will cure Ebola?
We haven't tested it on it, but Ebola is a virus, and this gets rid of all viruses.
Isn't usually the incubation period of Ebola in the patient about 2 weeks?
It's sometimes considered shorter than that. A Christian fundamentalist missionary came to me, and I outfitted him with some rechargeable nickel-cadmium and lithium batteries that he could recharge with a silicon solar cell, a panel, by normal sunlight, because he was going into the bush, and by God, he was going to find Ebola, get it certified, and send me a copy of the cure. And that was over a year ago. I never heard from him. He took my gift of the solar charging panel, the batteries, which cost me $8 each, and the blood cleaner, and vanished. And I think I was conned. But anyway, it is being tested, and until we have the absolute proof of before and after tests, I don't even want to bring it up. But I'm personally convinced that Ebola, since, well, some people think that that was man-made, but it may have been around for a long time before the Iranians built that plant down in Florida and worked with our own CIA and made the weapons that were tested in the Gulf War. But that's another long story. Yes?
Can you explain why garlic is so toxic?
It's the analog of sulfone, S-U-L-F-O-N-E, hydroxyl, H-Y-D-R-O-X-Y-L. If you rub a clove of garlic on the sole of your foot, on the outside of the body, you can smell it on your wrist in a couple of minutes, you know that. The garlic passes all of the barriers in the body, the blood-brain barrier, and anything that is in your body at that time is carried into your brain, which is why garlic kills so many brain cells, much more than the famous 6 martinis back in the 40s. They said you drink 6 martinis, you've killed 1 million brain cells. But you have so many billions and trillions that you'll never miss them. People have been worked on who are hydrocephalies, who have a brain about the size of a walnut. Do you have an answer to that?
No.
I'll get to you in just a minute. When we got doctors to take people off of what they thought was a health food, like the mothers thought morphine sulfate was good for the babies because they never cried, these people got well from low-grade attention span deficit, headaches. They came back and they practically kissed the hands of Andreas Marx and a dozen other doctors in the Santa Monica area that listened to my lecture. They looked on Lowry's table salt. Well, I'll never use this again. It's got garlic salt. And I'm never going to use these canned foods because they have garlic in them, and they're just better. And you're not going to believe this. It's an article of faith that garlic will lower blood pressure, kill worms. Sure, it kills anything. If you try it for 21 days and then eat some garlic again, you'll salad dressing that you bought in the store, you will feel so sick the next day that you will never doubt this as long as you live. And this is true. It's not my opinion, and I hate to bring it to you. I'm going to tell you a lot of things tonight that are true. You don't want to hear that the mafia owns controlling majorities of most pharmaceutical houses. People are horrible. Yes?
You mentioned about like using the silver and you water your vegetation and everything. Like around the Caribbean, all the palm trees are dying and stuff, and I've been there when they were all alive and it was all beautiful, and then I've been there.
They're dying in San Clemente. They're dying all over California. And if the people would get one of these pump-up sprayers and take a ladder or a cherry picker, spray the foliage, spray the trunk, spray around the roots, those palm trees will live. Proof of the pudding is in the testing. They're not going to do this. They're going to get tree doctors, spend a lot of money, try all kind of chemicals. They don't want a tenth of a penny solution. They're looking for something exotic. If it costs a tenth of a penny a gallon, it must not be any good. And you're just up against that. And when you're perfect, come around. Question here?
Yeah, it's a twofold question, two parts to it. I mentioned to you when I came to the table that I felt a lot of this, it's energy work that you're doing, essentially. What my question is, it seems to be similar to CanCell. I don't know if you're familiar with the product CanCell.
Yeah, I use software pretty well.
Okay.
And that did not work. That was his theory. And when it was proven over and over that CanCell did not work, his theory, which he told me in my presence with his own mouth, well, the Earth has shifted on the lunar node wobble, and I have to reformulate CanCell so it'll work like it used to. Now, Tom Bearden, my old buddy, believes in CanCell. When I was paralyzed in bed, this was 1989, I had nurses around the clock. I was told by the president of the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons, who'd made his first house call in 30 years because he knew me, that I would never walk again. I got CanCell from Sopcich and the rest of the people, and it didn't do one damn thing for me at all. And when I challenged him on it, and Gloria Vivo, who was his New York representative, she gave me this long rigmarole about how the reason it didn't work was astrological. I thought, holy cow, this isn't going to pass a peer review. So I know about all of these things. I know about Gaston Maisons and his ex. I know all of these people. It may have helped some people. Ed claimed that it was an electrolyte that changed somehow. You know the story. I got deeply involved. I was grasping at straws. Nothing helped. This did. That's the bottom line. And we can name hundreds of things. From shark cartilage, I asked the man that manufactures shark cartilage. He invented it. What's the difference between shark cartilage and Knox plain gelatin that you get in Ralph's? And he said about $100 a pound. Now get to know them and don't listen to their multi-level Ericksonian hypnosis and neuro-linguistic programming, where they hook these people into being zombies, into selling Mexican yam root instead of DHEA, which has no DHE precursor in it. These things are bullshit. They're garbage. They don't work. Ed wrote the book on oxygen therapies. He was telling...
Dunsbach.
Well, Kurt Dunsbach took that up after he got together with Wally Groats in Minnesota and decided to try hydrogen peroxide, which will work to a degree. But Ed McCabe published a list of doctors in oxygen therapies, which was 17 years ago, the copyright. When I got on the telephone and called the doctors Tang, T-A-N-G, in Reno, who he was saying were curing AIDS patients right and left, and I said, tell me about this. I'm Dr. Beck, and we had some mutual friends, so they told me. We have not had one single cure. When I confronted Steve Herman, MD, the radiologist, lived in Villa Park, only a few miles from me. His own son-in-law, Kenny, died. He and Jean's, his adopted son, his wife Jean's natural son, all died. He sent back his $17,000 Hansler unit and labeled it worthless. I know friends who bought Sander units. They're good units. They're $209, and they're the heart of these $3,000 and $4,000 devices with flow gauges. They do not work. It's a marvelous idea, but act up and keep hope alive. And these people, I know them personally, and they're extolling ozone by insufflation, by blood bubbling, by all of these methods. They're using legally in Germany, France, Canada, England, not Canada. And they do not work. I'm sorry. So go to the, if you want to know what red is, go down to the fire engine where they park them, open the door and look at the fire truck. And quit talking about 630 degrees nanometers, how many angstroms it is. Go look at a red fire truck and then you can't mistake it. So go to the people who are using these things and ask them about them. Ask if they can show you a stack of cures. They can't. And this breaks my heart. There are no simple methods except blood electrification that I know about at this time. Yes, sir?
Can you tell me exactly why silver colloid works? What chemically is going on that kills all these diseases?
According to the studies at UCLA, which I think are in the bibliography, the silver colloid, most of the bad guys are anaerobic. That means anaerobic. That means they live without the presence of oxygen, botulism, etc. Cancer. Those pathogens. It interrupts the respiration cycle, the CO2, other cycles, and they just die. And you can prove this with petri dishes, petri, whatever you choose to call it, and cultures. And put a drop of colloid in the middle, it kills 650 known diseases. Penicillin used to kill 8, but those have become strain resistant. You go to a hospital, you get an iatrogenic disease. About 400,000 people a year die because they've been to hospitals and picked up a strain of staph or strep, which are toxic to them, and there are no known antibiotics, none of them, but they drip it all day. Yes, go ahead.
You also said that several vitamins, I think you mentioned vitamin A.
Vitamin A is toxic in large doses.
A lot of things that are in normal everyday food got several vitamins and minerals that you mentioned as toxic. What are you supposed to eat?
If you're dying of AIDS and the candle is burning very dimly in you, you have to detox for 2 weeks. Just take simple foods, rice, beans, meat. We won't allow vegetarians on any of these studies because we want the studies to look good. They're not getting enough protein. Yeah, they're not getting enough animal protein in the 23 essential, well, mostly essential amino acids. And vegetarians think they're holier than thou and they're doing something that's healthful. And they're not. And so all of our people that are on the free studies that I'm funding are not vegans or vegetarians, and they get their, without buying hundreds of dollars a month worth of amino acids from Bragg or American Biologicals or Royal Lee, they get it out of the meat and the chicken and the Pacific salmon. Never eat Atlantic, it's full of mercury. We'll go into that, but we've got another thing. We've got to close here in a few minutes. Let's get a few questions in here. Yes, sir.
Do you have a way that researchers and writers can contact you? I know some people who would do a story in a large paper.
My attorneys say to avoid this, avoid the internet. You're just getting yourself as a target. The FDA is using the internet. They have indictments against a woman who was selling Hulda Clark's book, The Cure for All Cancers, The Cure for HIV. Everybody who gets on the internet with any medical advice has them come to the door with drawn guns. I will never appear in a major publication. I only appear in the undergrounds like Roy of Hollywood. I love the guy. KPFK, I've been on about 4 or 5 times. They love me. Art Bell had Wayne Green on this. He got 10,000 letters. What are you going to do if 10,000 letters descend on you? Do you have time to read those and answer them? I don't. I don't want it. I don't want any major publicity. The mafia will be right after the FDA, and they'll be right after the pharmaceutical. You see the problem. I'm telling the truth. And a man who tells the truth means a very fast horse. Questions? Goody. We're you're all done. You've been an incredible audience. Take these phone numbers off the bulletin board. If you want to get a hold of me and simply have to, call James Stillwell, and that's 714-972-0935, and it's on the blackboard. Take over.
Once again, thank you very much for coming out this evening. I know it's wet, very cold. Please drive safely, and please, again, watch where you step on the way out. There are wires and cables, a few things running around the auditorium. And if you could put some of your chairs back in the corner, that would really help out. I wish to thank all the people that helped put this thing together. And take care, folks. Again, please do not rush the tables, if you will. There are phone numbers on the board if you need more further information. Also, Dr. Beck has been kind enough to provide me with his material, which will be here on campus in the library under my name, Mark with the funny pants. So if you need a copy for later, it will be under my name, and it will be reference only for library use for you to read or research on your own. Take care. Thank you very much for coming, and hopefully in the future we can provide you with more of these speakers.